Dr. Marcus Kane stared at the equations floating on his holographic display, his coffee growing cold in his hand. The numbers made no sense, yet they were undeniably correct. He had checked them 17 times in the past 3 hours, and each calculation yielded the same impossible result. "Lisa, you need to see this," he called to his research partner across the laboratory. Dr. Lisa Morgan looked up from her own workstation, her dark hair falling across her tired eyes. The Aurora Research Station had been their home for the past 2 years, orbiting Earth's moon in complete secrecy. Their mission was simple in theory but complex in practice. Find a way to make human ships travel faster than light. "What is it now, Marcus?" she asked, walking over to his station. "Another dead end?" Marcus shook his head, excitement building in his voice. "No, this is different. Look at these quantum field equations. When I apply the Henderson-Wong principle to folded spacetime, something extraordinary happens." Lisa leaned over his shoulder, studying the glowing numbers. Her expression changed from mild interest to concern, then to outright alarm. "Marcus, these calculations suggest that spacetime itself could be torn apart." "Exactly." Marcus jumped up from his chair. "Every other species in the galaxy uses fold drives. They gently bend space to create shortcuts. But what if we don't bend space? What if we rip it open?" Lisa stepped back, her face pale. "That's insane. You're talking about creating holes in the fabric of reality itself." "Think about it," Marcus continued, pacing around the small lab. "A fold drive takes hours to cross between star systems, but a rift drive could move a ship instantly across vast distances. We could travel from Earth to the Andromeda Galaxy in minutes instead of centuries." Lisa pulled up her own calculations on a nearby display. "I'm running simulations now," she said, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "Marcus, these numbers are terrifying. The energy requirements alone would drain a star. And the potential side effects." The laboratory fell silent except for the soft humming of computers working through complex equations. Minutes passed as both scientists watched the simulation unfold. The results made Lisa's hands tremble. "The rift doesn't close," she whispered. "It stays open and it grows." Before Marcus could respond, the laboratory's communication system chirped with an incoming priority message. Commander Jake Sullivan's face appeared on the main screen, his expression grim. "Doctors Kane and Morgan, report to Briefing Room 7 immediately. We have a situation." The briefing room was small and sterile, with a large holographic projector in the center. Commander Sullivan stood beside it, his military uniform crisp despite the late hour. Behind him stood General Patricia Hayes, the director of the Aurora Project. "Sit down," General Hayes said, her voice carrying the weight of bad news. "What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room." Marcus and Lisa exchanged glances as they took their seats. The general activated the projector, displaying a star map of human space. Red markers indicated Earth's 12 colony worlds, scattered across 30 light-years. 6 hours ago, our long-range sensors detected a massive fleet entering human space, General Hayes continued. The hegemony has finally decided to act on their threats. They're moving toward our colonies with enough firepower to glass every human world. Lisa felt her stomach drop. The hegemony was a military alliance of 6 alien species, known throughout the galaxy for their brutal conquest methods. They had been making threats against humanity for years, claiming that humans were expanding too quickly into their territory. "How long do we have?" Marcus asked. "Their fleet will reach Kepler Colony in 3 weeks, Commander Sullivan replied. "Earth's colonies in 6 weeks. Our homeworld in 8 weeks, assuming they don't change course." General Hayes turned off the star map and faced the 2 scientists directly. "Our conventional ships can't match their technology. Their fold drives are faster than ours, their weapons more powerful, their shields stronger. We need something they don't expect." Marcus felt his heart racing. "You want us to build the rift drive?" "The government has reviewed your preliminary reports," the general confirmed. "Despite the risks, it's our only chance. The hegemony has never encountered technology like this. One ship with a rift drive could outmaneuver their entire fleet." Lisa stood up abruptly. "General, with respect, you don't understand what we're proposing. This isn't just dangerous, it's potentially catastrophic. We could tear holes in spacetime that never heal." "Dr. Morgan," General Hayes said calmly, "in 8 weeks, humanity might not exist. I'll take potential catastrophe over certain extinction." Commander Sullivan activated another display, showing the blueprint of a sleek warship. "This is the UES Defiant, our fastest prototype vessel. My engineering teams have been preparing it for experimental drive installation. How long would you need to build a working rift drive? Marcus looked at the ship specifications, his mind racing through calculations. With unlimited resources and a full team? Maybe 4 months. You have 6 weeks, the general said firmly, and whatever resources you need. Lisa shook her head. This is madness. We don't know how to control the rifts once they're created. We don't know if they'll spread or what they might do to nearby space. Then you'll have to learn quickly, General Hayes replied. Dr. Kane, are you willing to lead this project? Marcus looked at his research partner, seeing the fear and doubt in her eyes. Then he thought about Earth's 12 billion people, about the children in the colonies who would face hegemony bombardment in just a few weeks. The choice was terrible, but it was also clear. Yes, he said quietly. I'll do it, General Hayes nodded. Dr. Morgan, we need your expertise as well. Will you join the team? Lisa was quiet for a long moment, staring at the floor. Finally, she looked up. Someone needs to keep Marcus from accidentally destroying the universe. I suppose that someone is me. Excellent, Commander Sullivan said. I'll be overseeing the military aspects of the project. My job is to make sure you have everything you need and that the Defiant is ready for combat operations. General Hayes stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, you now have the most important job in human history. Build us a weapon that can save our species, and pray that it doesn't destroy everything else in the process. As they left the briefing room, Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. In 6 weeks, he would either save humanity or unleash something terrible upon the galaxy. There was no middle ground, no safe option, no time for second thoughts. The Rift Drive project had begun. The UES Defiant hung in space like a silver needle against the black void, its hull gleaming under the distant light of Proxima Centauri. Dr. Marcus Kane stood on the bridge, watching through the main viewport as the final preparations for the test flight continued around him. 6 weeks of sleepless nights had led to this moment. The Rift Drive was installed, calibrated and ready for its first real test. The drive itself was a masterpiece of human engineering, owed by a massive crystalline core surrounded by quantum field generators that could manipulate the very fabric of space-time. Final systems check complete, announced Dr. Kate Rodriguez from her engineering station. She had joined the project 3 weeks ago, bringing expertise in exotic matter containment that proved crucial for the drive's construction. All readings are green. Captain Amy Foster, the Defiant's commanding officer, turned to Marcus. Doctor, are you certain about the target coordinates? Marcus nodded, though his hands were shaking slightly. Empty space, 50 light-years from any inhabited system. If something goes wrong, we won't endanger anyone. Lisa stood beside him, her face pale but determined. She had spent weeks running simulations, each one showing the same terrifying possibilities. Marcus, the computers still can't predict what happens to the rift after we pass through it. We'll monitor it remotely, he replied. If it shows signs of instability, we'll return and try to find a way to close it. Commander Jake Sullivan walked onto the bridge, carrying a data pad with the latest intelligence reports. The hegemony fleet has accelerated their advance. They'll reach Kepler Colony in 4 days, not 3 weeks. We're out of time. Captain Foster activated the ship's communication system. All hands prepare for rift drive activation. Secure all stations and brace for unknown effects. The bridge crew strapped themselves into their seats as Dr. Rodriguez initiated the pre-jump sequence. The lights dimmed as massive amounts of power flowed into the drive core. Through the ship's sensors, they could see space itself beginning to shimmer around the Defiant. Drive core reaching critical resonance, Kate reported. Quantum field generators at maximum output. Marcus watched the readings on his display, comparing them to the theoretical models he had developed. Everything looked correct, but theory and reality didn't always match. Lisa, are you seeing any anomalies? Negative, she replied, though her voice carried doubt. But Marcus, these energy readings are off the charts. We're using more power than a small star. Field integrity holding, Kate announced. Initiating space-time fracture in 3, 2, 1. The universe exploded around them. Reality twisted and bent as the rift drive tore a hole through the fabric of space-time itself. The Defiant shot forward through the tear like a bullet, crossing 50 light-years in less than a second. Stars blurred past in impossible patterns as they traveled through the wound between dimensions. Then suddenly they stopped. Normal space returned with a jarring sensation that left everyone on the bridge feeling sick and disoriented. Marcus looked around quickly, checking that everyone was still alive and functioning. "Status report," Captain Foster called out, her voice slightly slurred. "All systems operational," Kate replied, running diagnostics. "We're exactly where we planned to be." The jump was perfect. Marcus felt a moment of triumph. They had done it. Humanity now possessed faster-than-light travel beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. But his celebration was short-lived as Lisa's panicked voice cut through his thoughts. "Marcus, look at the long-range sensors. Look at where we came from." He turned to her display and felt his blood turn to ice. Where they had started their jump, a massive tear in space writhed like a living wound. It was roughly circular, about 1 kilometer across and growing slowly but steadily. "What is that thing?" Captain Foster asked, staring at the sensor readings. "It's the rift," Marcus whispered. "It didn't close behind us." Lisa pulled up detailed scans of the phenomenon. "It's not just staying open. It's consuming matter and energy from the surrounding space. Look at these readings. It's pulling in cosmic dust, radiation, even the quantum foam of empty space itself." Dr. Rodriguez joined them at the sensor station, her face growing pale as she studied the data. "The gravitational readings don't make sense. It's like a black hole but wrong somehow. It's not just pulling matter in, it's erasing it from existence." Commander Sullivan stepped forward. "Can we close it?" Marcus and Lisa exchanged glances. Neither wanted to voice what they both suspected. "We don't know how," Marcus admitted. "Our theories focused on creating the rift, not controlling it afterward." "Run a projection," Captain Foster ordered. "How fast is it growing?" Lisa's fingers flew across her controls, feeding sensor data into the ship's computers. The results appeared on the main display, showing a slowly expanding circle of destruction. At current rates, it will be 2 kilometers across in 6 hours, 4 kilometers in 12 hours. And if it continues expanding, the captain pressed, it could eventually consume the entire Proxima Centauri system, Lisa said quietly. Maybe even reach Alpha Centauri after that. The bridge fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. They had created humanity's greatest weapon and its greatest threat in the same moment. Marcus felt the weight of billions of lives pressing down on his shoulders. "We have to go back," he said finally. "We need to warn Earth and try to find a solution." "Another jump?" Kate asked nervously. "What if we create another rift?" "We don't have a choice," Captain Foster decided. "The hegemony fleet is still advancing on our colonies. We need to get this information to Earth Command immediately." Marcus began preparing the drive for another jump, his hands shaking as he worked. Each calculation felt like a step closer to disaster, but they were trapped between two terrible choices: let the hegemony destroy humanity, or risk tearing apart the galaxy itself. "Coordinates set for Earth orbit," he announced. "Dr. Rodriguez, begin the charging sequence." As the rift drive powered up for their return journey, Lisa grabbed Marcus's arm. "We've weaponized faster-than-light travel," she whispered. "Every time we jump, we leave behind a wound in space-time that devours everything around it." "I know," Marcus replied, his voice hollow. "God help us, I know." The Defiant's drive core reached critical resonance once again. Space around them began to shimmer and bend as reality prepared to tear open. Through the viewports, they could see their destination: Earth, hanging blue and beautiful in the void. "Initiating space-time fracture," Kate announced. The universe twisted again as they shot through another dimensional wound, leaving behind a second rift in space. This one appeared near Earth's orbit, immediately beginning to consume the solar wind and cosmic debris around it. As they dropped out of the rift near Earth, Marcus realized with growing horror that they had just brought their terrible weapon home. The rift drive worked perfectly, too perfectly. It could move ships instantly across any distance, but at the cost of leaving permanent scars on reality itself. Humanity now possessed the power to travel anywhere in the galaxy within seconds. They also possessed the power to destroy it one jump at a time. The question was whether they would learn to control their creation before it consumed everything they had tried to save. Ambassador Helen Carter stood in the vast chamber of the Galactic Council, feeling incredibly small beneath the soaring crystalline walls that rose hundreds of meters above her head. Representatives from 47 different species filled the amphitheater-like space, their various forms creating a bizarre tapestry of galactic life. She had been summoned here just 12 hours after the Defiant's return to Earth, word of humanity's new technology, had spread through the galaxy with shocking speed, carried by automated monitoring systems that detected massive space-time disturbances near both Proxima Centauri and Earth's solar system. The Council recognizes Ambassador Carter of the human species, announced the ceremonial voice that echoed through the chamber. Helen could never determine which species provided that voice. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. She walked to the central speaking platform, acutely aware that she was about to defend humanity's most desperate gamble before the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The platform rose slowly, lifting her until she was level with the lowest tier of representatives. Honored council members, Helen began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. Humanity comes before you in a time of great crisis. Our species faces extinction at the hands of the hegemony, and we have developed new technology in our defense. A ripple of movement went through the assembled representatives. Helen could see dozens of different species, the flowing, jellyfish-like ethereals in their hover tanks, the crystalline resonance whose bodies chimed softly with each thought, the massive titans whose stone-like forms required reinforced seating. Council Elder Zephyrian of the Ethereal Collective floated forward, his translucent body pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that Helen's translation device interpreted as deep concern. Ambassador Carter, our sensors have detected massive space-time disruptions in your region of the galaxy. Please explain the nature of your new technology. Helen took a deep breath. We have developed what we call a rift drive. It allows our ships to travel instantaneously across vast distances by creating temporary openings in space-time itself. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien voices, clicks, whistles, and harmonics. Several representatives began speaking at once, their translation devices creating an overwhelming flood of alarmed commentary. Helen had never seen the normally composed council react with such immediate terror. Order, the ceremonial voice boomed. Order in the council chamber. Elder Zephyrian's bioluminescent patterns had shifted to deep red, a color Helen had learned indicated extreme distress among his species. Ambassador, you speak of tearing holes in the fabric of reality itself. Are you aware of the implications of such technology? We understand there are risks, Helen replied carefully. However, the hegemony fleet will destroy all human colonies within days if we don't act. We had no choice but to develop whatever weapons we could. A new voice spoke from the upper tiers of the chamber, Representative Korthak of the Titan Collective, his massive stone form making the platform vibrate with each word. Young species, there is always a choice. Some paths lead to survival, others lead to the destruction of everything. Helen felt a chill run down her spine. Honored Representative, if you have knowledge that could help us understand our technology better, we would welcome your guidance. Elder Zephyrian exchanged complex light patterns with several other ethereals before responding. Ambassador Carter, what I am about to share has been the most carefully guarded secret in galactic history. 68 million years ago, a species called the Devourers developed technology similar to what you describe. The chamber fell completely silent. Helen could hear her own heartbeat in the sudden quiet. The Devourers were brilliant scientists and engineers, the Elder continued. They faced a war against a coalition of species much like your hegemony. In their desperation, they developed what they called void drives, technology that could tear holes between dimensions to achieve instantaneous travel. Helen's mouth went dry. What happened to them? They destroyed themselves and took half the galaxy with them, Korthak rumbled. Their dimensional tiers did not close. They spread, merged, and eventually consumed entire galactic arms. Billions of species died. Entire civilizations vanished into the void. Dr. Peter Hayes materialized beside Helen as his holographic transmission connected from Earth. She had requested that the Council allow Earth's leading physicist to join the discussion remotely. His face was grim as he studied readings from a datapad. Council members, Peter said, his voice tight with worry. I have disturbing news from our monitoring stations. The rifts we created are showing signs of expansion acceleration. What started as 1 kilometer tiers are now 3 kilometers across and growing faster. Elder Zephyrian's entire body flashed bright white, the ethereal equivalent of screaming. It has begun again. The cascade effect that destroyed the ancient galaxy. Representative Silex of the Crystalline Harmony spoke for the first time, her voice creating complex musical tones. In our archives, we have records of the final transmission from the Devourer homeworld. They realized too late that their dimensional wounds were connecting to each other, creating an unstoppable wave of destruction. Helen felt the weight of the entire galaxy's stare upon her. Is there a way to stop it? Some method to close the rifts? The Devourers tried everything, Korthak replied. They sent their greatest scientists and engineers on suicide missions to collapse the tiers. Nothing worked. The dimensional wounds are self-sustaining once they reach critical size. Dr. Hayes looked up from his datapad, his face pale. I'm receiving reports from our deep space monitors. The rift near Proxima Centauri has just merged with a natural quantum fluctuation. The combined disturbance is now expanding exponentially. The council chamber erupted in panic. Representatives began communicating rapidly with their homeworlds, many preparing for immediate evacuation protocols. Helen realized that humanity had not just endangered themselves, they had potentially doomed every living being in the galaxy. Elder Zephyrian floated closer to the platform, his patterns now a deep, mournful blue. Ambassador Carter, the Galactic Council hereby issues an ultimatum to your species. Destroy all rift drive technology immediately and submit to Council oversight. Or we will be forced to sterilize your worlds before the cascade spreads further. Helen's heart sank. Honored Elder, the hegemony fleet will reach our colonies in 3 days. Without the rift drive, humanity faces certain extinction. Better one species dies than the entire galaxy, Representative Korthak stated bluntly. We have seen this horror before. We will not allow it to happen again. Dr. Hayes stepped forward in his holographic form. Council members, I may have a theoretical solution. If we could coordinate the activation of multiple rift drives in a specific pattern, we might be able to create constructive interference, essentially canceling out the dimensional tiers. Theoretical, Silex chimed dismissively. The Devourers had many theories as well. None saved them or their victims. How long would such an attempt take to prepare? Elder Zephyrian asked. Peter consulted his datapad. Minimum 2 weeks to build additional drives and calculate the precise coordinates. Possibly longer. Impossible, Helen said. The hegemony will have destroyed our colonies by then. Elder Zephyrian's patterns shifted to a color Helen had never seen before. Deep purple shot through with silver. Then humanity faces the same choice the Devourers faced. Save yourselves and damn the galaxy, or sacrifice yourselves for the greater good. The platform began lowering, carrying Helen back to the chamber floor. Around her, the representatives of 47 species watched with a mixture of fear, anger, and pity. She realized that in trying to save her people, she might have just sealed their fate. The Council will vote on our response to the human crisis, the ceremonial voice announced. Until that decision is reached, humanity is under immediate quarantine. Any human vessel that uses rift drive technology will be destroyed on sight. As Helen left the council chamber, she knew she was returning to Earth with the worst possible news. Humanity had created the ultimate weapon, but using it would make them the enemy of every living being in the galaxy. The choice was no longer between victory and defeat. It was between existence and the destruction of everything. Commander Ryan Clark stood in the war room beneath the Pentagon, staring at the holographic display that showed the approaching hegemony fleet. Red markers indicated enemy ships, over 300 vessels, carrying enough firepower to reduce Earth's colonies to radioactive dust. The Council's ultimatum is unacceptable, he said to the assembled military leaders around the table. They're asking us to surrender our only advantage and face certain extinction. General Patricia Hayes activated another display showing humanity's defensive fleet. 50 ships, mostly outdated and outgunned compared to hegemony technology. Without the rift drive, it would be a massacre. Admiral Foster has reported from the Defiant, the general said. The ship's rift drive is fully operational and ready for combat deployment. Dr. Kane has also completed work on 3 additional drives. Colonel Sarah Bennett leaned forward, her expression troubled. General, have you seen the latest reports from Dr. Hayes? The rifts are expanding faster than predicted. Using the drives could trigger the cascade effect the Council warned us about. Commander Clark slammed his fist on the table. The cascade is theoretical. The hegemony fleet is real. They'll be at Kepler Colony in 18 hours. On the main display, intelligence reports showed the composition of the enemy fleet. Battlecruisers, destroyers, and support vessels from 6 different alien species, all united in their desire to eliminate humanity from the galaxy. Their fold drives were faster than human technology, their weapons more advanced, their shields nearly impenetrable. "Sir," interrupted Lieutenant Kevin Morris, rushing into the war room with a data pad, "we're receiving a transmission from Kepler Colony. The hegemony fleet has begun bombardment." The main display switched to a live feed from the colony's surface. Bright flashes lit up the night sky as enemy weapons struck the settlement's shields. Buildings shook under the assault and civilians ran for emergency shelters that everyone knew wouldn't protect them for long. General Hayes closed her eyes for a moment. "How many people are on Kepler?" 2 million civilians plus 50,000 military personnel, Lieutenant Morris replied. Commander Clark turned to face the room. "I'm taking the Defiant and the other Rift-capable ships to engage the enemy. We can't let them slaughter our people while we debate theoretical consequences." "Ryan, you're talking about starting a war with weapons we don't understand," Colonel Bennett warned. "The Council made it clear. Any use of Rift drives will result in our extermination." "They can exterminate us after we save our colonies," Clark replied grimly. "General, I need authorization for immediate deployment." General Hayes looked at the displays showing both the hegemony bombardment and the spreading rift tiers near Proxima Centauri. The choice was impossible: certain death for millions of humans now, or possible death for everyone in the galaxy later. "Authorization granted," she said quietly. "God help us all." 2 hours later, Commander Clark stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant as Captain Amy Foster prepared the ship for combat. 3 other vessels had been equipped with rift drives, the destroyers Newton, Darwin, and Hawking. Together they represented humanity's most desperate gamble. "Coordinates locked for Kepler Colony," announced Dr. Kate Rodriguez from her engineering station. She had insisted on joining the mission, arguing that her expertise would be needed to maintain the drives under combat conditions. Captain Foster activated the ship's communication system. "All vessels prepare for rift jump. Remember, we're creating tiers in space-time. Stay clear of the rifts after we pass through them." The 4 ships activated their drives simultaneously. Space around them twisted and bent as reality tore open. They shot through the dimensional wounds like bullets, crossing 27 light-years in an instant. They emerged directly behind the hegemony fleet, catching the alien ships completely off guard. The enemy had never encountered anything that could move so fast or appear so suddenly in the middle of a battle formation. "All weapons, fire at will," Captain Foster ordered. The human ships opened fire on the surprised hegemony vessels. Their conventional weapons weren't much more powerful than before, but the element of surprise was devastating. 3 alien destroyers exploded before they could raise their shields. But Commander Clark had a more dramatic demonstration in mind. "Dr. Rodriguez, prepare for a combat rift jump. Target coordinates directly through the enemy formation." Kate's face went pale. "Sir, a rift opened inside their fleet will—" "I know exactly what it will do," Clark interrupted. "Execute the jump." The Defiant's rift drive activated again, tearing a hole in space-time that bisected the enemy fleet. The dimensional wound didn't just allow the ship to pass through, it consumed everything in its path. 5 hegemony battlecruisers simply vanished as the rift tore through their positions. The remaining enemy vessels scattered in panic, their fold drives creating chaotic escape patterns as they tried to flee from humanity's impossible weapon. But the human ships pursued them relentlessly, using short rift jumps to appear anywhere on the battlefield within seconds. Captain Dana Wells watched the battle from the bridge of the evacuation transport sanctuary, orbiting safely behind Kepler Colony's moon. Her ship was loaded with civilian refugees, people fleeing from what everyone expected to be humanity's final battle. "My God," she whispered, watching the sensor displays. "They're winning." The hegemony fleet was in full retreat within an hour. Of the 300 ships that had attacked Kepler Colony, fewer than 50 escaped. The rest had been destroyed by conventional weapons or consumed by the rift tiers that now decorated the space around the colony like deadly flowers. But victory came at a terrible price. Each rift jump had left behind a wound in space-time, and these wounds were growing. Captain Wells watched in horror as the dimensional tiers began to consume debris from the battle, then asteroids, then the very solar wind itself. "Captain," called her sensor operator, "the rifts are starting to affect the colony's orbital mechanics. The gravitational anomalies are pulling Kepler out of its stable orbit. On the surface below, 2 million colonists celebrated their salvation, unaware that their planet was slowly being dragged toward a cluster of dimensional wounds that would eventually tear it apart at the subatomic level. Dr. Marcus Kane materialized on the Defiance Bridge as his holographic transmission connected from Earth. His face was ashen as he studied readings from the battle zone. "Ryan, you need to evacuate that system immediately. The rifts are merging." Commander Clark looked at the tactical display, where 6 separate tiers in spacetime were slowly drifting toward each other. "What happens when they merge?" "We don't know," Marcus admitted. "But according to the Council's historical records, it's the first step toward cascade collapse. Once the rifts start connecting, they accelerate exponentially." Captain Foster turned to face Clark. "Sir, we've saved Kepler colony from the hegemony, but we might have doomed the entire system." 3 more hegemony fleets were approaching other human colonies, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy everything in their path. The rift drive had proven devastatingly effective in combat, but each use brought the galaxy closer to catastrophe. "Begin evacuation of all civilian personnel," Commander Clark ordered, "and prepare for the next engagement. The enemy has 2 more fleets approaching our colonies." As the human ships prepared to leave Kepler's doomed system, long-range sensors detected massive fleet movements throughout the galaxy. The Galactic Council was mobilizing its forces, and so was the hegemony. Word of humanity's reality-tearing weapons had spread like wildfire, and every major power was choosing sides. Captain Wells supervised the refugee evacuation as her ship filled with families fleeing their homes. She watched through the viewports as Kepler colony slowly fell toward the expanding rift tears, its surface beginning to show signs of gravitational stress. Humanity had won its first battle with the rift drive, but in doing so, they had started a war that could consume the entire galaxy. The question was no longer whether they could defeat the hegemony. It was whether anyone would survive the weapons they had created to do it. Behind them, the Kepler system began its death spiral into the growing dimensional wounds, a preview of what might happen to every star system if the rift cascade could not be stopped. Dr. Lisa Morgan stood in the emergency laboratory aboard the UES Defiant, surrounded by holographic displays showing the spreading chaos across the galaxy. Rift tiers now decorated 17 different star systems, and the worst fears of the Galactic Council were coming true. The dimensional wounds were beginning to connect. "Show me the Vega sector readings again," she said to Dr. Peter Hayes, who had joined her team 3 days ago when Earth scientists realized the full scope of the crisis. Peter activated the display, revealing a sight that made both scientists' blood run cold. 3 separate rift tears, each originally created by human ships during battles with hegemony forces, had merged into a single massive wound nearly 10 kilometers across. The combined tier was consuming matter at an accelerating rate, pulling in asteroids, cosmic dust, and even light itself. "The cascade effect has begun," Peter said quietly. "Just like the ancient devourer civilization, our rifts are linking together and amplifying each other's growth." Lisa ran calculations on her workstation, feeding sensor data from across human space into the quantum field equations. The results were terrifying but also revealed something unexpected, a pattern in how the rifts were expanding and connecting. "Peter, look at this," she said, highlighting specific data points. "The dimensional tiers aren't random. They're following quantum field lines, connecting along paths of least resistance through spacetime." Peter studied her calculations, his eyes widening as he understood the implications. "If we can map those field lines precisely, we could predict where the cascade will spread next." "More than that," Lisa continued, excitement building in her voice despite the dire circumstances. "If we understand the pattern, we might be able to disrupt it. Create interference patterns that cancel out the dimensional tiers instead of amplifying them." On the bridge above them, Commander Jake Sullivan was coordinating humanity's desperate defense against both the hegemony and the approaching Galactic Council fleets. The political situation had collapsed completely. Both alien factions now considered humanity an existential threat that had to be destroyed before the rift cascade consumed. "Everything, Commander," called Captain Amy Foster from her station. "Dr. Morgan is requesting an immediate meeting with all senior staff. She says it's urgent. Minutes later, the ship's senior officers gathered in the main conference room as Lisa and Peter presented their findings. The holographic display showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with red markers indicating rift locations and projected connection paths. "We think we've found a way to stop the cascade," Lisa began, "but it requires using every remaining rift drive simultaneously in a coordinated pattern across multiple star systems." Commander Sullivan leaned forward. "Explain." Peter activated a simulation showing how precisely timed rift jumps could create interference patterns in the quantum field structure. Each rift drive creates specific distortions in spacetime. If we activate them all at exactly the right coordinates and timing, the interference should collapse the existing tiers and prevent new ones from forming. "What's the catch?" Captain Foster asked, though her expression suggested she already suspected the answer. Lisa's voice was barely above a whisper. "The interference pattern requires the drives to activate from inside the existing rift tears. Every ship involved will be torn apart at the subatomic level." The conference room fell silent. Dr. Kate Rodriguez, who had been maintaining the Defiance rift drive throughout the crisis, spoke first. "How many ships would we need?" "All of them," Peter replied. 27 vessels with rift drives, positioned at specific coordinates throughout the affected systems. The timing has to be perfect. If even one ship is off by a few seconds, the pattern fails and the cascade continues. Commander Sullivan stood up and walked to the viewport, staring out at the stars. In the distance, they could see the approaching lights of both Hegemony and Council fleets, converging on Earth's solar system for what everyone expected to be the final battle. "How long do we have?" he asked. "The cascade is accelerating," Lisa answered. "Based on current expansion rates, the merged rifts will reach critical mass in 6 hours. After that, the chain reaction becomes unstoppable." Captain Foster activated the ship's communication system. "All rift-capable vessels, report to Frequency 7 for emergency briefing." One by one, the commanders of humanity's rift drive ships joined the conference. Captain Dana Wells aboard the Newton, Commander Alex Parker on the Darwin, Captain Robert Stone commanding the Hawking, and 23 other officers who represented humanity's most advanced technology. "Ladies and gentlemen," Commander Sullivan began, "Dr. Morgan and Dr. Hayes have developed a plan to stop the rift cascade. It requires the sacrifice of every rift-capable ship and crew in our fleet." He explained the technical details while Lisa and Peter provided supporting data. The plan was complex but theoretically sound. If they could position the ships correctly and activate their drives in perfect synchronization, the interference patterns would heal the wounds they had torn in spacetime. Captain Wells was the first to volunteer. "My ship is already in the Kepler system right next to the largest rift cluster. Count me in." "The Darwin is yours," Commander Parker added. "My crew knew this was a one-way mission when we signed up." One by one, every ship commander volunteered for the suicide mission. These were people who had seen their colonies burned by the Hegemony, who had watched rift tears consume entire star systems, who understood that their choice was between personal survival and the survival of everything. Dr. Marcus Kane appeared on the main display as his transmission connected from Earth. "Jake, I'm sorry I can't be there with you. The calculations require someone on Earth to coordinate the timing from outside the affected area." "Marcus," Commander Sullivan replied, "this was your invention. You shouldn't have to watch it end this way." "Yes, I should," Marcus said firmly. "It's my responsibility to see this through." The 27 ships began moving to their assigned positions throughout human space. Each vessel carried a crew of volunteers who had chosen certain death to save the galaxy. They had 6 hours to reach their coordinates and prepare for the final activation. Captain Foster stood beside Commander Sullivan on the Defiance bridge as they approached their target location, the merged rift cluster in the Vega sector. The dimensional tiers loomed ahead of them like mouths of hungry darkness, consuming everything that came too close. "Amy," Sullivan said quietly, "I want you to know it's been an honor serving with you." "The honor was mine, Jake," she replied. "At least we're going out saving everyone instead of destroying them." Dr. Kate Rodriguez worked at her engineering station, making final adjustments to the rift drive. "Drive core is ready for synchronized activation. All quantum field generators are operating at maximum efficiency." Across the galaxy, the other 26 ships reported their readiness. Each vessel was positioned at a precise point relative to the existing rift tiers, forming a complex three-dimensional pattern that would either save the universe or destroy it completely. "All ships report ready," announced the communications officer. Dr. Kane confirms optimal timing in 30 seconds. Commander Sullivan activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the commander. In 30 seconds, we're going to attempt something that no one has ever tried before. If we succeed, the galaxy lives. If we fail, at least we tried to fix what we broke. It's been an honor serving with all of you." On Earth, Dr. Marcus Kane watched the countdown timer in his laboratory, his finger hovering over the activation command. Around him, the world's greatest scientists monitored quantum field readings from across the galaxy, watching for any sign that the plan might work. 10 seconds, Marcus announced on the fleet communication channel. Commander Sullivan looked around the Defiance bridge one last time, at the people who had become his family during humanity's darkest hour. Captain Foster met his eyes and nodded. 5 seconds. Dr. Rodriguez's hands moved over her controls, preparing for the final activation sequence. 3, 2, 1, execute. 27 rift drives activated simultaneously across 17 star systems. The interference pattern was perfect, creating cascading waves of constructive and destructive quantum interference that rippled through space-time itself. The existing rift tears began to collapse as the carefully calculated distortions canceled out their dimensional instabilities. One by one, the wounds in reality sealed themselves, healing the galaxy's cosmic scars. But the ships that created this salvation were consumed in the process. The Defiant and its sister vessels were torn apart at the quantum level, their atoms scattered across multiple dimensions as they passed through the healing rifts. On Earth, Marcus Kane watched the sensor readings as the rift cascade collapsed and spacetime returned to normal. The plan had worked perfectly, the galaxy was saved. But 27 ships and their crews had paid the ultimate price for humanity's redemption. Admiral Amy Foster stood before the memorial wall in Earth's orbital headquarters 5 years later. Reading the names of the volunteers who had saved the galaxy, her young daughter Emma tugged at her uniform sleeve. "Mommy, why are there so many names on the wall?" Amy knelt down beside her daughter, thinking carefully about how to